Hey, good evening, everybody, and happy Sunday night to all of you out there from Unlock the Middle Land. My name is Dean Packard. I'm the principal of Charlton Middle School, and alongside of me, I've got a great group of individuals tonight. Just excited to talk about something that we think is very important, and we're very excited to have Evan Robb back as well. We've had him on before, but our cast of educational leaders are just dynamic, and we're really excited to get going tonight. Navigating Leadership, number 42, Aiming High, the new book by Evan Robb. Super excited. Chris, how are you? First and foremost, my friend, co-founder of Unlock the Middle, side by side with me tonight, along with our panel.
Awesome, Dean. Thanks for having the setup this evening. It's going to be a real exciting time talking with Evan and Ashley and Drew, as well as Josh, yourself, about Aiming High, a new book that's going to be coming out in January to help educational leaders kind of navigate the hopefully post-COVID world. As Dean said, I'm Chris Starcheski. I'm the principal at Dudley Middle School, and I work really closely with Dean. We're in the same district, regional district. We're kind of brother and sister middle schools, and one of the most important things is collaboration and communication to ensure that our district and our kids are getting a really effective experience. And tonight is a great opportunity for us to welcome everybody out there into the fold as we sit down and we really discuss some key contributing factors to help educational leaders be on the same page with one another and improve their craft as we move forward. But hey, we've got a couple of new faces out there. I'd like to introduce Drew Tomlin. Give us a little bio if you could, Drew, and welcome.
Yeah, hey, thanks so much. Honored to be a part of the program. This is Drew Tomlin, principal of Heritage Middle School in Westerville City Schools, about a stone's throw away from Columbus, Ohio. We got a small university down the road that maybe you guys have heard of. Not affiliated with that university, but anyways. So just, again, been 27th year working in the wonderful middle grades. So honored to be a part of the program. Thanks.
Awesome. It's always great to have, other regions in our conversation. Going across the bottom of the screen, Josh Tovar. How are you tonight, Josh?
Hello, everybody. Josh Tovar, proud principal of Memorial Pathway Academy, ready to hit it hard tomorrow as we introduce our kids to homecoming, because the students that we provide support for are students that just arrived to the country, Vietnam, Ethiopia, El Salvador, Honduras, and they've never had that piece of Americana. And I'm very excited to see how if they dress up or how they react to this part of our beautiful country. Let's have a great week.
Awesome. It's always great to instill some new traditions and some new experiences to let folks understand a little bit about our climate and culture and history. It's always great. Ashley Hubner. Did I get that right, Ashley?
Hubner.
Well, welcome, Ashley. Go ahead and let us hear a little bit of who you are and what you bring to the table tonight.
I am a former Texas public school educator and recently moved to Florida, and I am working as an educational consultant in Venice, Florida, working with a couple of companies doing virtual coaching and curriculum development. And so have my hands in a few projects with different schools and districts across the state, and it's been a really fun experience.
Awesome. Well, welcome. We're glad that you're here tonight with us, Ashley. And, of course, we've got Evan Robb. He's been a previous guest. He's a middle school principal, highly successful there. And he's also an author, letting us know a little bit about how he does his business and how everybody else could do their business, take their game to the next level. Evan, if you don't mind, just a little bit of background for those in the audience who don't quite know you as well as us.
Hey, thanks a lot, Chris and Dean. As always, any opportunity to get together with you all and all the great educators that you have on your show is a privilege for me. So I'm excited to be here. My name is Evan Robb. I am starting my 30th year in education as a middle school principal. I have been a principal since 1999, which I have come to realize is unusual and may not be that much repeated as time moves on, because the job certainly got a little bit more challenging over the years. Over the course of the years, I've been an English teacher, a history teacher, team leader, department chair, written a couple books along the way. And when I have a little bit of free time, I get to do some speaking to different school districts across the country, which is a lot of fun also.
Awesome.
It's great to have you here, man. And I'll tell you what, last time we had you on, we were talking about the 10-minute principle, and it was a great opportunity for us just to get that focus through your lens. And you know what? I use that book quite often just for those quick snippets of ideas, just to keep me calibrated on how to get my job done and stay focused on the bigger perspective of things. But let's switch gears and talk a little about aiming high. You have a new book coming out in January. Chris and I had the distinct pleasure of doing a quick review for you, which was really great. And I enjoyed doing that and providing my feedback on it. But from your perspective, what is Aiming High all about, and why did you take the time to write it?
Well, lockdown was a challenging time for me, and trying to figure out how to make the time worthwhile, what was important, and I also wanted to use it as an opportunity to reflect, on what time was like during that time, and also what would be some successful ways to potentially move out of that time. Because eventually we're going to move out of the pandemic and eventually start moving back to normal. So the book, at its core is about high expectations. It's about teacher efficacy, collective efficacy, and the role of a leader working collaboratively with students, with teachers, and a community to elevate learning in a building. The book particularly focuses on access, equity, and elevating literacy and numeracy in schools. I feel really no doubt that raising everything is important right now as we move towards normal, but literacy and numeracy, are of particular importance.
Well, they're at the baseline of everything that we do. There's no doubt about that. And, if we get those core areas down and developed well with systems, I think that everything else begins to take care of themselves. But let's dig in just a little bit deeper, and let's go right to a subtopic that we had. Let's talk about agency. What are you talking about when you're asking, how do you model agency for your staff, and how does your staff know that you're committed to student learning? The two of them kind of combined together, and where were your thoughts behind that?
Well, I'm certainly interested in hearing from our other educational leaders here about that topic also. But one of the things, that was thematic through the 10-minute principle, and it certainly exists within this book, is the importance of the leader to make sure that they are modeling what they would like to see in their building. So that requires some reflection on words and actions, and making sure that there's congruency between words and actions. And then, in regards to agency, for a school to function effectively, I believe, teachers need to make a commitment to professional learning and professional development, but, it cannot be something that's dictated from a principal. It has to be something that's modeled. So, I love to bring a spirit of agency to my staff, and I like for that, to trickle to our children, because we want to teach our kids how to be learners also. So the message I want to get about right now to start the conversation is the importance of the leader to model that within the building. And then I guess the question is how do you model that? What are some effective ways to communicate your personal agency, and how might that resonate with others?
Josh, why don't we kick that over to you first, because you do this very, very well, and I'm not across to take it away from anybody else in here, because I think we all have our hats on the right way when it comes to really marketing and standing back and really planting those seeds. So Josh, why don't you start?
I think it's twofold. You need to come to the table with the credibility, as Rob said, about showing the team members what your vision is. Every instructional leader has their own idea of how to deliver instruction. Every district might have their own vision of what that thing is. But it comes down to the same thing Todd Whitaker says. It's not about programs, it's about people. Mm-hmm. And us being the main chair, we need to role model those things. How do we do it? Number one, we're the ones that start off doing the PD. We present to the team members with our vision for the campus delivering instruction. And for us, and I've mentioned this before, it's Sean Kane's Fundamental 5. Always engaging the kids, always recognizing them, and making sure that writing is part of the process, and always establishing daily what will be taking place. And that goes hand in hand with kids don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Is making sure that the kids feel welcome when they enter your room. I stated earlier that the campus that I provide service to is a campus of brand new to the country. Talk about being lost in a brand new world. And so we need to make sure we make them feel comfortable when they enter our four walls, when they enter our home. And from that point on, once we make that connection with them as individuals, as students, that we care about them, that we love them, then the instruction goes there. Because when they feel lost, like I used to be, I was that kid. I came from another country. I had to learn English. When I came from another country, I was scared. I didn't want to say anything. I didn't want you to make fun of me or how I spoke or how I tried to speak. So I needed that comfort, fight or flight, brain research now, fight or flight. So it's brain research, having an academic game plan, and connecting with kids. And it's about the main chair and the administrative team making sure that they role model that and set the expectation repeatedly. Repeated. It's about patterns of behavior. And I feel that that's been the game plan that has been very successful at the different schools that I've provided service for.
Drew?
Yeah, I would say it's hard for me to separate agency from self-efficacy, because I think that agency starts with self-efficacy. So for teachers to have a sense of agency, I think that every teacher needs to start with having a sense of self-efficacy, that they have a belief that when they go into that classroom that they can do awesome things. And then once they feel like, hey, I can do awesome things in the classroom, then that sense of agency grows where, gosh, I cannot just change the landscape and the feeling of my classroom, but I can change my grade level, my team, maybe even my school, maybe even my school district. So it starts with that kernel of that seed of self-efficacy. That's what I think. And teachers need time to do that, and they need structures within the school day to do it. So for instance, in our building, and this is a district thing too, we have teacher leadership council, and those teachers, sit and they talk, and I'm a part of it too. And we talk about what is beneficial to teacher life and changing the school and changing the culture. So time and structures are very important. In terms of modeling agency, I mean, gosh, it's about showing that you're doing the work. It's about that vision. Like Josh said, it's about that vision, but it's also about that visibility. It's about expressing what your passion is and what your purpose is every single day and getting out there. So that's what it is for me.
Good stuff. Ashley?
I would say with a lot of leaders that I feel like kind of embody this and have made an impression on me as an educator, they had very strong beliefs, and they were very convicted in what they believed, and they showed that passion through everything that they did, and they didn't falter on it. They weren't afraid to have those hard conversations and making, the PLC, the hallway, the cafeteria, all about instructional, conversations, like what can we do to grow students, what's going on. And so they weren't, afraid to have that and just continue that all day, every day in everything that they do. Being seen, being in the classrooms, being in the hallway, being at the front door, showing that you care, that you're there, and that you're going to do whatever it takes for every kid and for every teacher in the building. And so that's really probably the leaders that I've worked under that I feel like showed me the most. Those were the attributes that I saw.
And I'm looking at it and I'm saying, okay, where can I come in with a different point of view here? I look at it as creating a learning community that's open for everybody. And I don't care what your role is within a building. I don't care if you're the bus driver, if you're the cafeteria worker, you're the custodial engineer, whether you are a paraprofessional, whether you're a teacher, that all of you have the ability to take risks and try to get the highest reward you can for student engagement. If we do that from our seat and we do that from the principal's lens, guess what happens? All of a sudden your building begins to take off. But there's got to be that big piece there of being able to take those risks without looking over your shoulder, to look at what student engagement looks like at a brand new level, especially coming out of post-COVID right now. And I think that's vitally important. And I'll tell you, if we can create that in our buildings, the buzz will take care of itself. Chris?
Yeah, the only thought I have, it's very parallel to what Dr. Drew shared, the idea of, teachers having an understanding of their zone of influence, and the idea that, the closed classroom doors no longer exist. Ashley nailed it as well. That culture of collaboration, the focus on professional learning communities, whether or not you use the acronym PLC or not, engaging in conversations of high-level instructional practices that influence and engage students to move their learning forward. And, every now and then, folks realize, gosh, I've never thought about instruction that way, or I've never tried that instructional method, or I've never given the kids the opportunity to use this peer feedback mechanism before. And then, as Dean mentioned, taking that risk, feeling as if they can try something new without penalty if it's a failure. And if it's a failure, being able to support them and come back as the leader that says, hey, you know what, you took a chance. It was in the best interest of kids. Saw something great down the hall that was similar to this. Let's go ahead and rethink this a little bit. And now let's get you back on track and move forward with that idea. How can we elevate your practice and take it to the next level? Really, really solid, instruction practices overall. We just have to break down those walls between teachers. And middle school's prime for that. I mean, everywhere you go. Team. It's all over the place, right? And what's a team do? You work effectively together towards a common mission and goal. And we're just primed and ready for it. So, as we think about, the idea of the individual influence in that zone of influence, we talk about collaboration next, and how we go about observing, collaborating, and influencing practice in our buildings with instruction, with curriculum. What are some ways that you're approaching this now, in particular, that we're coming off? We're in the midst of a significantly challenging period. We've had the foot on the pedal of educator evaluation and observation in a lot of ways. Nerves are frayed. Everybody is stretched thin. How do you stay true to the purpose, balance all those elements, and keep folks moving forward with their practice? Let's hit Josh down in the middle.
It's the thing that I observed, having been in 13 schools throughout 29 years, is the most effective leaders that I've worked for follow patterns of behavior. They don't stop what they're doing. They're consistent to what their game plan is, sitting in their chair, and they follow through. They don't do a one-shot deal with anything. And is making sure that you continue that habit, and you remember whatever your habit is, depending on the situation, of unity, of student success, of academic success, of raising the rigor, whatever it might be that's on the plate at that moment for your campus, is making sure that you constantly are visible and speaking truth to word of what your vision is. And I've seen so many successful leaders take schools from mid to high, not good to great concept, Jim Collins, but making sure that it's those patterns of behavior of student success. And they could apply that, whether it be at the elementary, middle, or high school level, because they already know how to implement that, taking into consideration the human factor.
Evan, if I could with this one here, Evan, kick it to you for 1 second. Now let's add feedback to that equation as well. And as you're looking at the collaborative process, and then either giving feedback or providing feedback from a leadership standpoint, thoughts on that?
Okay, before I dive into that one, I just want to go back to something that Drew said, because it's really important. And Drew had talked about the importance of efficacy and agency. And I write about this in my book, but you'll never see teachers who have a super high sense of personal efficacy who don't work on developing their agency. Like, it goes hand in hand. Then I think, as Drew would probably agree, the principal has a role in helping to build the collective efficacy within the building, because that's where you get some real power. So with collaborating, and clearly this has already kind of been a little bit touched on. It is, I think it's important for the leader of the building to make sure that you are modeling through your words and actions what you expect to happen in your building. So I'll give you an example. We expect, certainly in my school, but I think you all would agree, that you like to see kids collaborate in the classroom as part of their learning versus just sitting there and just being sitting in a lecture and just gathering information. So it would be rather contradictory if a teacher, a principal rather, just pushed information out without ever seeking collaborative opportunities. So as the leader of the building, you have an opportunity to model the things that you want within a classroom. Another thing that we want in classrooms is good feedback. And I know you've had Rick Wormley on the show before, and Rick would say that, you can certainly run a building without grades, but you can't run a building without feedback. And feedback needs to be part of the professional dialogue that occurs within a building. But, as Chris pointed out, and Chris talking about trust, feedback only works if you have an environment that's focused on relationships and trust in a building. Otherwise, people get offended by it, or they get hurt, or they get angry. So then the thing to think about as the leader of the building is, what are you doing to increase the comfort, to take risks, to increase the likelihood that trust will occur within your building, again, through your words and actions, because the leader can elevate those things and the leader can extinguish them. And it's one of those things, it's kind of, you got to work on it all the time, and something that you never take for granted. But if you make a mistake with that, it's hard to get out of that hole. And people remember that in the building, and that can become problematic. So, I think there's tremendous power in collaborating. And I think as we head into a post-COVID world, it would be pretty naive for anyone to think that they have all of the answers to solve the challenges that we have. But I think I'd like to think that most administrators in a building know that working together with the people in their building, has already been pointed out, because we are in the people business, is where we're going to find our answers.
Evan, my mind just went to something else for a second here. And one of the things coming out of post-COVID is our opportunity to reinvent ourselves. And, as we reinvent some of the things that we're really, really used to doing, and public education sometimes is guilty of allowing certain mindsets to continue on and continue on. So you kind of want your educators in your building to say, okay, what do I look like in a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now? How do I become better? What's my path of growth look like? And when you have those conversations about growth and how it pertains to student engagement and overall closing of academic and achievement gaps for kids, it becomes a whole different spiraling conversation. And again, that excites me, because I think there's a lot of room for growth in a lot of schools out there as we look to get to that next level. So let me kick it down to Drew for a second, and feedback in your building and what that looks like.
Yeah, I would say that obviously we've got a formal evaluation process that we could, I could bore you about, but it's got a great rubric, that's always nice. But I would say that, obviously beyond just the structure of feedback, I think it really begins with, and this is going to sound kind of hokey, a little Hallmark moment, but I think it does begin with trust and caring questions that you have with teachers every day. Things like when you're in the hallway, hey, how you doing? Are you getting what you need? Hey, can I help you with that? And then follow back up with it. Like those kind of questions that people just think are pedestrian really do mean a lot. And that when you put currency in somebody, and when you put emotional currency in someone's bank account, then you can have a critical conversation later and they won't see it as a withdrawal. You see what I'm saying? So I think that's really important. And I think something that we've been focusing on quite a bit this year is really helping our teachers and staff with goal setting. And I know we have our, teachers are required to write a professional growth plan and stuff like that, and really digging in, like helping them dig in. What do you really want to learn more about? What do you really want to dig into this year? And, I understand that teachers are stressed and afraid and things like that too. But, I hate, this is going to sound unpopular. I hope I'm not going to say something wrong, but there's a whole other population that we ask to do things all the time. And that's our kids. We ask kids to do tough stuff all the time. And, so, sometimes, it's okay to have teachers, do some goal setting and some tough stuff too.
Totally agree. Ashley, through your lens from a curriculum person in a district.
Well, I was going to say, I think it's easier to take feedback from an administrator when you do feel like you have that trust in them and that relationship in them. And three things kind of came to mind when I think about the best way that, to build relationships is taking that time to listen to your teachers. They want someone who's responsive, who's going to actually respond to what you're saying, not just listen and walk away. And then are supportive, come back with some kind of support to help you. And if they know that there's someone that they can lean on, and they're more willing to grow and do the things that you want them to do in the classroom. One of the things I try to remember with the teachers that I'm working with right now, because they are living in this world, like every day is a new adventure. There's no one to cover their specials classes because teachers are out with COVID. So they have to keep their kids. And so they have no planning periods, and it's really hard. So I try to just think about, in that moment, what did I see and what are our easiest next steps? Like, what is that next rock we could tackle that's going to get us to our goal, and trying to make it as simplistic for them as possible. Like, these are the noticings. These are the questions I had. These are the great things going on in your room. But what can we do to get from here to there? And what's the simplest thing we can start with to move that way? Because if you give them a mountain of things that they need to go and fix and do, you lose them. So we have to make sure that we can relate on them and work with them just like we work with kids. We got to meet them where they are. So we know what our goal is, but how do we get them there in the easiest way?
Less initiatives and more time. And I'll tell you right now, and I think that's the greatest thing that educators would appreciate out there. There's no doubt about that. And more time with kids and more time to experiment. The evaluation tool, we all have that, and that it is what it is. It's a tool. But I enjoy more the post conversations and actually more the pre-conversations first leading into it, and then the post-dialogue afterwards, and the self-reflective moments about what worked and what didn't work. So again, I mean, that feedback is an ongoing conversation from day 1 to day 180 in our district. Chris?
Yeah, I think the only possible addition into this conversation, Drew, I love the concept of emotional currency. We talk about it with kids all the time. And, when we ask kids to go to the ends of the earth for us, they need to understand that we're there to go with them. Josh, you always summarize that they don't care how much you know unless they know how much you care. And, that relationship piece is absolutely essential. But, transitioning over to kids, student learning is what we do. We are schools. And the ultimate goal is to make sure that kids are able to be prepared for their future, be able to prepare for, opportunities that they don't know yet what could exist. How are you staying as an educational leader connected to student learning and also providing staff with the ability to maneuver the tricky waters? Kids are coming in with some significant regression compared to past years. How are we allowing that level of flexibility and individual teacher agency to meet the kids where they're at and move them forward? Evan?
That is a big question. I got a big chapter written on that, but I'll try to hit on a couple pieces of it. At the core, you got to be in the classrooms. You're going to have to see what's going on within your school. It is impossible to get a tap for the learning that's happening in your building if you're not there. The other thing that Dean talked about, this concept of kind of reinventing, and there are interesting opportunities to do that now. And I think those are things that we can think about in terms of data, in terms of assessments. I think that to some degree, schools in general tend to be a little over-assess, with our kids, and we've got to find some balance points with that. I think that as we look at learning and we look at where we want our kids to go post-COVID, it's important to have some conversations with your staff about asset-based thinking and deficit-based thinking within your school. And so what I mean by that in the simplest way is that deficit would be the only thing that we're going to look for are the things that are missing with kids. And so your school becomes a remediation factory. Asset would be understanding that kids will have gaps, but understanding that kids do have other skills. They may not fit the state standard, but things that can be elevated and developed, as we work on our learning for the course of the year. I think it's important to have some flexibility with curriculum and realize that we may need to be a little more thoughtful about what's covered, perhaps what's not, perhaps how things intertwine. Dean, going back to what you said, and I hope this doesn't exist in any of your schools, but unfortunately, there are some schools in America and across the world where some folks have every day of their teaching mapped out at the beginning of the year for the entire year. So right now, that would be very, very hard to do with the disparities, that exist amongst kids and the challenges, that we face. So again, I think there's some good opportunities for that, but I think that, if a building gets too hunkered down in deficit thinking, it will impact the efficacy of the building. It's going to start impacting a lot of things. It's going to impact teacher morale. It's going to start impacting culture in the building. And it's going to impact kids, especially the kids that need the most help. Because I think we all would probably agree that the kids that had the toughest time during COVID are kids who come from challenging backgrounds, or kids who had special needs. And so that requires, differentiating. It requires personalization and, working collaboratively with teams to make sure that we're making good decisions about what we're doing with kids, hopefully not over-assessing our kids. And making some smart decisions about curriculum and instructional delivery.
Well, over-assessing is happening everywhere, and that's part of, I get the benchmark, and you need to have those barometers set. But I love something that what you said earlier was, and Richard, what he said in the quote that he had, to ask the kids. Ask the kids what excites them about learning. Where are they at? Why not take their opinion? And I know it's a very difficult concept, especially if you're working with kids between the ages of 10 and 14, because sometimes their response could be the path of least resistance. However, I think overall, if you ask them, they may enlighten you to a new way, a new access point to learning for all kids out there, because that one child or two children sitting in the back of your room who don't ever want to speak, they need a voice. And that voice will come from somebody who's willing to share it. So I appreciate you saying that. Let's kick it down to Josh. Josh, let's talk about this a little bit from your lens.
Well, from I gather from the original question was, what do we do? Well, it's crucial that I myself keep up with what's going on with other leaders across the country, that I hear from them So I find value a lot in podcasts. I'm all over those, and I hear everything, and I promote those from other fellow educators. And when I'm finished hearing them, I promote them on my social media, saying, "Hey, this is what I heard. This is the summary of it. Listen to it or not." And I also promote that within our team members within our house, making sure that, hey, it's there. If you're into podcasts, not, it's another avenue for you to keep on growing as an educator. And I always give them that information that they need to keep on enhancing their PLN using social media, because people are still very hesitant about using that. And in regards to the team members, it's always been a philosophy of mine that they learn better from themselves. All the wisdom is within those walls. Yes, it's good to go to conferences and bring that back, yet all the great strategies. Oh my God, we see so many beautiful things, right? We go one hallway, and 5 out of the 6 classrooms, they're rocking and rolling. And so if we keep on promoting the great things in there, and then another thing is having instructional rounds amongst themselves. Let's go. Call in the substitutes. Go see what's going on. Go see the lesson frame. Go see the power zone. Go see the closing of the lesson. Learning from themselves. And then from there, then we get that little nucleus of people to go to PD. Now that the conferences are opening up, let's go to Florida. Let's go to Massachusetts. Let's go find out from other educators that are facing the same thing that we are. What are they doing for being successful? So just to summarize, for me, I'm getting the fellow peers of mine, assistant principals that have podcasts, principals that have podcasts, see from their lens, from Canada also. I like hearing the Canadian podcasts, and also within our team members, showing them the literature, but also them doing instructional rounds and making sure they learn the best strategies from each other. Because you know what? We're sharing the same kids. They're going from class to class. So we need to know what works in classroom A and why isn't that student being successful in classroom B.
Drew, how do we know if students are learning?
Well, first of all, to go with what Evan said, goodness gracious, you got to get out there in the classrooms and actually see it for your own eyes. That's the first such crucial step. The other part, and this is missing, I can say from our own administrative team, and I think is that after you get into classes and you know that other administrators in your building are getting into classes, having time to debrief and talk about, hey, what did you see? Hey, what did you see? What common trends do you see in our classes? Too often we get caught up in the administrivia and the busyness of administration instead of the business of educational administration. So that's my first part of the answer. The second part is learning effective as well as affective, meaning is it helping to close gaps and provide more access to students? That's effective. But then, and is it moving them forward? And then is it also affective? Is it actually moving from an emotional, affective way too? I think sometimes we get too myopically focused on the effective and we say, all right, if they, the emotional part gets lost. So I think it has to work in both worlds.
Ashley.
I think first you have to address your current reality of what's going on in your campus. And like you all said, you have to do that by being in the classrooms. But you also have to look at that data and not be afraid to talk about the data with your teachers. I do like what Evan said about, there are some districts and schools that are over assessing. I always like to say, like, pick your priorities. Like, what is your one focus and what one data tracking tool are you going to use to track that? Because there's everything in the sun to collect data for, but is it useful if you are overwhelmed by every piece of data that you're looking at and don't even know where to go? So I do think you have to pick some priorities that align with your campus goals based on what's going on at your school. I think then you need to use some collaborative teams, get the teachers buy-in, take your best of your best educators, make committees and talk about what do we need to do to change the curriculum? What's our plan for our campus? One of the things we did in the previous district that I worked in, coming back from being shut down, we knew that the kids were going to have some social emotional issues. And so we rewrote our whole 4 to 5 weeks of our social studies curriculum and embedded all the SEL components we could into every single one of those lessons to let kids have that sense of community within the classroom and feel safe and secure, and just built that relationship between the teacher and the class before even digging into the full-blown content, because the kids needed that time to kind of regain like a sense of community within their school. So I think, taking your best of the best and, putting some teams together and rethinking, how are we going to do things? technology has opened up a lot of new opportunities with us with learning, with differentiation, with small groups, with flipped classrooms. I mean, there's so many different ways now to get to students that may not have had that attention before, that got lost through the cracks because of the new platforms that we have that are out there. And the teacher training on technology has skyrocketed because of COVID, that they're more willing to take risk and try those platforms and use those in a way that's going to get effective classroom instruction for those students. And then with all of that, I think you have to remember to celebrate. Like, we have to, as administrators, we have to celebrate our teachers. The teachers need to celebrate the students. We need to celebrate as a campus. And we just got to keep promoting all the good that's happening in the school and the progress we're making, regardless of what happened because of COVID.
Ashley, thank you for saying that, because right away my mind went to a couple of things. I said, pump the brakes. Coming back out of COVID, guess what? This is a baseline year. You want kids to like coming to school. It is your responsibility not only to teach content, but to get kids to be happy, to be wanting to be in your class, and create that buzz and it factor. We do a lot of theme-based months, okay? Or each term has a theme to it, and we break it down and we talk about those themes and build upon them every day through student announcements. You look at its overall building morale, and you look at absenteeism. They're real good barometers on how well things are going in your school. And I'm not only talking students being out of school, but I'm talking staff taking time off. And I get the fact that COVID has its threshold and its points, and everybody does need a day once in a while. Get it? Check that box. We'll always support that. But going back to what Ashley said, celebrate the heck out of all the small victories that you have. Give every student the reason and the why to be in school. And guess what? The rest of the stuff will take care of itself. Chris, kicking it over to you.
Yeah, you've probably heard me before talk a little bit about assessment overload and standardized testing and the like. And I think that the idea of learning gaps has been, a reality, but the real perspective needs to be on what Evan hit. The idea of asset-based versus deficit-based, understandings. Ashley, you talked about, use of technology and collaborative tools and engagement in a variety of different ways. Our kids of 2.5 years ago never would have had the experiences that they've had now, or the ability to perform the way that they're performing now if we didn't end up being shut down. We need to rethink a little bit. We need to recalibrate and focus on those absolutely essential must-haves. Content, discrete bits of content can always be learned, but teaching kids to engage in that content with critical thinking skills, collaborative opportunities, high-level communication skills, that should be our assessment focus. Anybody can open up the computer in their pocket and find the information to answer questions. Be able to articulate the understanding, connect the dots of the big picture. That's where we really need to be. And that's what I look for when I walk into those classrooms and I'm trying to identify whether students really understand the content or they just understand the fact-based, discrete information that's being asked of them to spit back. But, one big thing, that we're sitting down and considering as we, really work back in is stakeholder input, stakeholder value, and communication. Our families, our caregivers, they're struggling just as much as us in the classrooms and the schools, if not more. We're in a situation where there's an economic crisis in the nation. There's obviously a healthcare crisis, and everybody's being impacted in a variety of different ways. How is it that you're utilizing your communication system to engage families? Is it working? Is it effective? Are folks feeling the love and feeling the level of understanding that we need them to? Let's kick it on down to Drew.
Yeah, I mean, I can say that the goal of our communication at Heritage is to amplify the positive narrative about the middle grades, but at the same time to be transparent about the challenges. Because if you just say everything is, rainbows and unicorns, it's going to be what they're calling that toxic positivity, right? So I would say that where our communication is strong is it's high in terms of engagement, and it helps our house. We have a house system, so it kind of pushes that too and gets kids excited and families talking about the word of the week and the action challenge that we have about that word of the week. A lot of cool stuff like that. I'd say the thing that we need to continue to work on, and this is a struggle, but it's so important in the middle grades, is that reciprocal dialogue. We don't really have a channel or a forum necessarily for families to then say, yes, thank you from school, and here's what we have going on in our community. That's always something that we need to continue to grow at our school, and I think across all of our schools.
There's a difference between communication and creating involvement.
Agreed.
And I think the more you create involvement leads to empowerment, leads to growth, leads to a deeper learning community. So
Agreed.
Just something to think about, but good stuff there. Evan, kick it up to you in regards to this.
Yeah, I would say that the number one area that most schools need to work on is how they get feedback from families about the communication that they're doing. I think that you got to really look at it as a building. I think there needs to be some real intentionality. How's your building using social media? How's your building emailing families? A lot of schools have something like we use School Messenger. It's an effective way to do it, but if you're popping an email twice a day to parents 5 days a week, suddenly no one's going to look at it. How's your website? Is your website up to date? Is it representing your building well? A lot of schools use Google as a platform. Teachers have Google sites. That's great. Is it up to date? Is it getting information out to families? One of the things that I like to look at in the school is like email communication with families. Is there a standard for at least an expectation for response time when emails come into the building, and for staff, or administrators to get back, because no one wants to send an email and never hear back on it. And those are some things that we can definitely, all work on, myself included, certainly on creating clarity to our staff as we look at a communication plan. I think like anything in education, if it's random, unorganized, and really unthought out, it tends to not be that good. But I think back to what Drew said, it is interesting to try to get feedback from families, and how do you want to do that? So in my building, we played around with Google Forms and been able to get feedback that way. But during COVID, many small schools across the country love having conference nights and back to school nights and team meetings. And some of those things, we weren't able to do them. They're coming back now, but I think at the end of the day, the face-to-face contact is the best thing. The old Cheers analogy, everyone, that whole concept of being someplace where everyone knows your name, it's important for kids and it's important for families too, that they feel that they're known, they have a connection to the building.
Josh?
Well, I think that the best calling card or best survey you have is the discipline reports or behavior in the campus. Because if kids feel comfortable and respecting each other, the discipline issues will not be going high. When you're out in the morning and parents are not pulling you over, because I meet all the kids at the bus and the drop-off zone, and it's always a smile. Those are other little avenues as an administrator that you gauge. So if right now I only have 5 discipline referrals this year at our home, and I haven't had anything that's really affecting us, then obviously the strategy we're doing, we're fine-tuning it every day, because you know what? I keep on getting brand new kids every day from out of country. But you know what? Every time I think, am I the principal for these kids? Do I make them feel comfortable? Am I the right principal to help those parents who might not know English to where they know they could communicate with me? Not only that, but am I promoting the positive gains that your kids are doing by what they do use? They don't use our email. The parents that I have that don't know English don't know how to turn on a computer. So I communicate via their platform. And you know what's their platform? Facebook. I put everything on Facebook. Everything that I need to communicate about their kids. If I want to communicate with my current kids, I communicate with them on TikTok because that's where they're at. So I go to where my audience is, and their calling card of what they feel about our home is how they communicate about our home to their parents. And if you want a lot of angry parents, if you're having a lot of angry parents, you're not doing a good job communicating or providing the correct environment for student learning or for them just to feel comfortable. So it's about that promotion and everyday body language, visibility, and making sure that we always honor and respect the successes of our team members and our students.
Ashley?
Well, Josh took the words right out of my mouth, because that's what I was going to say. It's like, you have to know your audience. You have to know your community clientele. You have to know how they communicate. If they're not responding to you, they're not showing up to events, then you don't have buy-in. So you have to really know them and how they communicate. From a parent's perspective, I will say one of the things that my daughter's principal does that I really enjoy, and I didn't know that I would enjoy it until this year, but she sends out video messages, and it's not just an email or a voice. Like, I see her face. I've only met her once in person, and I hopefully won't meet her a lot because my daughter's pretty good. But like, I feel like I know her because she sends out video messages talking about what's going on at the school. And, there was beginning of the year, dropping off kids at the beginning of school was horrible. And she was like, be patient with us. We're working on it. But you saw her as a human. And it wasn't just someone behind a computer sending out, newsletters and emails and all that stuff. So I did love that she did that. The flyers that come home with 1,500 words on them, I don't want to read them. Like, I want to hear you tell me about what's going on and know that everything's going good. So I do love that.
I look at Friday afternoon, 3:00. I schedule it, my email to go out every week to parents. I do have a video of myself for less than 2 minutes about the highlights in the school, and I think it's important. But what I do find is that too much is not good. And we said this earlier, short, sweet, to the point. Brevity suits you well. Celebrate, accentuate, underline, bold the things that are important, and make it smaller, because nobody wants that 12-page monthly newsletter anymore, because it's just not part of the brain synapses that we're dealing with right now. It's quick bits of information that stay on top of things. And Evan, you said this earlier. I love the part of calibrating. The messages are going out the same. If it's teams calibrating, sending out messages across to grade level parents, I think all team leaders should be doing that. Just a very simple schedule and send. Schedule and send. It doesn't take any extra time. You know what? And just keep it simple. My gosh, people are our own worst enemies sometimes when we get in the way of things, okay? Keep it simple. The simpler, the better. Chris?
Hey, the world that we're in right now, information is immediate, whether it's positive or negative, and everyone knows how to access it. So like Josh said, know your audience, know your communication tools, make sure you can find that sweet spot and listen to the feedback. If folks are saying, hey, we're a little unsure about what's going on, make sure they find a way to know. And if they're saying, hey, too much, feather the pedal, because you can spend more time in classrooms than sitting there writing that 12-page newsletter. I guarantee you. And that's where the rubber's going to hit the road.
Hey, aiming high. Let's kick it over to Evan right now, because we're at the 47-minute mark. We can talk for an hour and a half, and that wasn't the plan tonight. So, Evan, aiming high, coming out in January. Just a couple of quick lines about that. Where can people find it? I know you're excited about it, okay? I know this is something that's been going on for a while for you, and it's getting closer. So go ahead. The floor is yours.
There'll be a pretty big push through social media a week or so before it comes out. But, I guess like any book nowadays, Amazon is probably going to be the best place to find that. Corwin has their own bookstore also, because this is published through Corwin Press. And excited to get it out there, and excited to just hear some feedback from other educators about it too. I hope it helps some folks.
I will say, having had the privilege and honor of checking out a draft, the book was written in a way such that it's kind of that can be on the corner of the desk, not necessarily a cover to cover read.
Right.
I'd really like to know a little bit about topic X. I can open it up. Topic X, parent communication, influencing student engagement and student agency in the building. How do we go about creating authentic assessments in this environment, given that there are some learning gaps that are there? It allows an opportunity to rethink a little bit some of those key things that can certainly overwhelm us. So it's definitely going to be a great read for anybody who's out there, without a doubt, in the recovery experience for those of us who've been in the game for a while.
Hey, I appreciate your words, Chris. I think, like you said, just with general information flow and how people get information, it's in short, quick tidbits of information. And, the last book I wrote with Corwin was a lot the same. It's not meant to be read cover to cover. It's meant to look at a chapter, see something that's interesting, and get some ideas. So I'm hoping that resonates. Thank you.
We're pumped to have you on here tonight. We're really excited for what the future holds for you, Evan. I know that you'll be bored after about a few months after that book's done. You'll probably start doing something else again. Just seems to be the fitting system for you. So again, you're a great voice for all of us. You're an advocate for education. You're a pioneer for blazing trails and doing what's right for kids and leaders and educators alike. So thank you very much. Chris, bring us home as you always do, brother.
Hey, well, on behalf of Dean and I, thank you all for joining us this evening. Ashley Hubner, it was great to meet you. Dr. Drew Tomlin, as always, it's a pleasure. Josh Tovar, you're becoming a trio of a staple for us, here. And, of course, Evan Robb, it's always great to connect and maintain connections like we've done. I think it was maybe 8-9 months ago when we first met on the air. It's always a great opportunity, great experience. Those of you out there in Unlock the Middle Land, be sure to check us out on that website. Check us out on social media at Unlock the Middle. The idea is to get better together and take our educational games to that next level. Be well, everybody. Enjoy the week ahead, and we'll be coming back at you next weekend. Be well. Everybody here, stay on, and we'll chit-chat in a moment.